Hello everybody, it's Eli here from TreeFall Studios, and today we're back with part 2 of our Unity Basics series, creating a micro game. If you followed along with last week's episode, you should have something that looks just like this. I have not changed or touched anything in this scene, so everything is still the exact same name, so you can follow along. So the first thing we're going to be doing is renaming a couple objects and creating our player cube. So we're going to recreate this and rename it and say floor. And then what we want to do here is we're going to turn the camera just a tad. I'm going to create a couple of these. I'm not going to create the full level yet because we're going to do a level design video after this. I wanted to move a character around first as an easy concept. So we're just going to duplicate the floor. We're going to drag it over and put it about like that so it matches, just so we have a little bit more room. The camera is still looking down at the floor. That's where we left it last time. Now we're going to go to create game object and we're going to create a cube. So we're going to go here. We're going to take this guy and we're going to zero him back out. And then we're going to pull him up just a tad. Also, the snap settings are now up here on the top of the scene view window. You're going to click this. If yours are like mine, I change mine a lot. I'm going to change this back to 1. It was changed for a different project. So this way you can snap a lot easier to 1. We're going to take this guy and we're going to rename him to player controller. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to add component down here. And then we're going to call this new script player. Actually, let's call it basic player controller. And then you're going to click enter to create an ad. If it doesn't work, click create an ad down at the bottom. It's going to load for a second and boop around here. And then once you have it opened, see, it's going to automatically default to your window down here in your project tab. We're going to go ahead and create a folder, and then we're going to call this scripts. And we're going to go ahead and drag this in here. So all of our scripts are going to be placed and compiled in the same folder. The actual architecture does matter when you go to build a game because it compiles the scripts in different locations in a certain order, I believe. So we're going to open this up and then double click this to open it up in Visual Studio. If you don't have a copy of Visual Studio, I actually didn't walk you through this. Chances are, if you already have Unity and you're downloading and working on games, you've probably already downloaded this, but you can download this for free from Microsoft. And I'm actually not going to show it in this tutorial because that would kind of slow the whole thing down, but you want to get a copy of Visual Studio as your scripting editor. And then the first thing we're going to do in this code is we're going to delete these comments here just to clean it up a little bit. We don't need that. We're not going to need this or this. And you know, this doesn't really make it more efficient, but I like to have it as minimalistic as possible. So if there are spaces that don't need to be there, I will delete the line. But then for things like this, sometimes I will leave a space between just so these things are more readable. So it's kind of up to you on how you like to code. Just dropped my phone example here. All right, so the first thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be just moving the character through the most basic system possible. This is, like I said, this is just a micro game, and we're going to be moving the character object today. So this is just basic movement in Unity. So you want to go up here and you want to go above the start and below this bracket here. This is where we're going to instantiate some variables. So we're going to create some called, we're going to create some of the type float. And I like to call it HMV. You can type out the words horizontal and vertical if you want. It's all up to you, but this is just so in my head I know the horizontal movement and the vertical movement of my controller, like the physical up and down on the stick or the WASD keys on the keyboard. We're going to be working with the keyboard today and not doing controller. So we're going to create these, and then we're also going to come down here and we're going to go public int speed, and we're going to do int instead of a float. If you want to have more precise controls, you would want to put float here, and then you could put in speed of like 3.5 or 5.5. We might do that towards the end of the tutorial, but for now we're going to keep it basic. This is a less computational value than this, because this can contain decimals and this is only whole numbers. So we're just going to use that for now. And then in the start, we're going to go ahead and give it a value of 3. And like I said, I made this variable public here, so you can test it out in the Unity engine. When you save this, it'll show up in the editor, and you can type in 4, 5, 6, 2, whatever value you're feeling like you want to test, and then you can move the player around and just get some quick feedback that way. But for now, we're going to keep it at 3, so we're just going to actually go ahead and place it in start, and then we can delete this later, and you can just put it in the public variable, or more efficiently, we'll get rid of the public, and we'll just, once you've chosen your character's desired speed, we'll go ahead and place it in start like this. So in the update, we're going to go ahead and give some values to these floats here that we just created. So we're going to type in h equals, and then you want to type in input, and then we're going to get an axis, and then we're going to go ahead and call this horizontal. So basically what this is this is getting an input from the Unity input system, and we're getting an axis. We're not getting a key, we're not getting a button, and the axis is called horizontal. By default, when you create a Unity project, Unity will already have a horizontal and vertical axis for you set up. So we're just going to use their naming conventions because they've already got the keys placed for us. And I'll show you how to change that in just a little bit. Then we're going to do the same exact thing for the vertical axis. Okay. So this is going to read the inputs from our WASD keys while we are in the engine. And then also to actually move a character. So we're getting some inputs now. We're going to create a vector 3. We're just going to put it right here for now. And I'm going to call this amount because this is the movement amount, the amount that you are actually pressing in the controller. And then we're going to call this a new vector 3. So this is creating a new guy. So this is the type here, this is the name, and then this is declaring this is a brand new vector 3. And we're going to put in h for the x value, 0 for the y value, and v for the z value, because in Unity the y is up. So this is like our jump value. This is going to be the z is actually going to be moving forward and back, and this is like left to right. So that's the amount. This is basically storing a position, a x, y, and z coordinate of the values with a 0, and the values that we're getting from our stick on our controller, or the values we're getting from our keys. And then to actually move, we're going to do the simplest move here. We're going to do transform.translate. And then what we want to put in is we want to put in our amount. So the amount that we just created above times our speed, which we listed in the very beginning, times time.delta time. So when we time something by time.delta time, what that does is it makes it frame rate independent. If you have a speed and an amount here, and you don't times it by delta time, if your game is running at 30 FPS on one system and 60 on another, your speed will be different. But if we times it by the time rate here, it will be the same exact speed no matter what the frame rate is. So we're going to do all of that, and then we're going to close out, and it's going to load and go ahead and compile here. We got to do a couple more things to get this guy to move. This should, let me just double check this. Game, play maximized, play focused. This should automatically fill into 3 since I placed it. Yep, okay, that works correctly. We'll go back to play maximized. Just wanted to double check. Okay, so what we need to do is we want to add a, actually I want to give him some physics here, even though, because he is moving. Technically, originally Unity's documentation said that if you moved an object, you wanted to put a rigid body component on it. But then they changed their documentation over the years, and now they say just because an object moves, it doesn't need a rigid body. But for this, we are going to, so we can have a little bit of gravity effect. We're going to use gravity checked on, so this guy will now move. And basically what we've got here is we got a collider. Actually, to demonstrate this a little bit better, so all right, this is the player. We're going to go up here, and then what we're going to do is We're going to go create a new folder, and then we're going to call this materials. And we're going to create a couple materials here just so you guys can see this a little bit better. So you want to right click in the project window, and we're going to go click on create. And then you want to go down here and click on material. We're going to call this player for now. And all we're going to do is click on this albedo here. We're going to click on the color, and we're going to make him red because player 1 is always red. And then we're going to drag that on. And then for our ground, let's just make this like a black or a gray type of thing. So let's make another material, and then let's call this ground. We'll just say this is kind of like a, a metal floor type deal. And then we're going to drag this here and here. So now you guys can clearly see what is going on. And if we hit the play button, since we added the rigid body, our character will fall and touch the ground. Actually, this is already ready to test, so if you want to click into your play window and you're using the WASD keys on the keyboard, you can see we can move left and right, we can move up and down, and we can move in like diagonal directions. And all of that was done in those few lines of code. So the reason we added the rigid body component was to take advantage of the physics system so that, when the character started a foot above the ground, he actually falls straight to the ground. And as you can see, when we start to go over the edge here, we just tumble off the side. All right, we're doing one more thing for this video, and then that's going to wrap up this small tutorial segment. We're going to go ahead and click on this guy. We're going to open up the rigid body component, and we're going to open up this little tab here that's called constraints. And then we're actually going to freeze the rotation on the Z. So what this is going to do, let's go ahead and save this before we get too far in. So you saw that when we got over the edge here, the gravity pulled our character down and we flipped over. So by adding that constraint, you can basically see that we can go all the way to the very edge of the collider before we just fall right off. And for the little game that we're going to be creating, that's going to work just fine. Basically what we're going to be doing in the end is moving a character around kind of like the old Zelda games, to where you don't have a jump, but you can fall off stuff and you can, go from ledge to ledge, because I'm going to show you guys how to build puzzles using elevators and trigger volumes and stuff like that in code. So that'll be a separate episode, but that's going to do it for today's episode. So in this episode, just to recap, we created an extra piece of floor. We created 2 materials to color our floor and our player just so we can look different. We created our player object. We gave him a rigid body. We left the colliders and all these other values alone. We created a basic script here that just moves him using the keyboard. And just to go ahead and show you guys, in case it doesn't move for some reason, somehow your axes got messed up, if you go to edit and you go to project settings, we tab it over here, we go to input manager, we type down, we pull this drop down menu up, and here are our axes. Horizontal and vertical should be already created. And as you can see, we have the A and D in here and the S and W here for vertical. And they are, these are key and mouse buttons for the keyboard. So that's what your settings should look like to get the exact same movement that I have. So that's going to do it for today's video. That is how you basically move a simple player object without tripping and falling over and applying gravity in Unity. I tried to make this a little bit shorter. I believe the runtime is actually a little bit longer than I hoped. I'm trying to make these basically 5 to 10 minute concepts, and I'm going to break it down and have quite a few episodes before the end of the series. But by the end, we're going to have a full functioning working game. So if you enjoyed this video, please smash that like button. If you find moving an object like this to be really simple and you didn't know how to do it, let me know in the comments below. Before I end the video, I need to give a huge shout out to everybody who supports TreeFall Studios on patreon.com. I got to give a personal shout out to Carmen, Red, Shark, and Minnow, and Overhyped Gamer. Thank you guys for what you do for TreeFall Studios on patreon.com. I could not do what I do without you. If you guys are interested in checking out the Patreon page, links will be in the description below. You can also support the channel by checking out our games. The links for our games to purchase on the PlayStation Store or Steam are also below. Alright guys, hope you are enjoying this Unity tutorial series, and I can't wait to see how this game turns out in a couple of months. See you guys later. Catch you in the next video.